Good morning, Commissioner Havel.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
morning.
It is a beautiful morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good morning, Matt Lightson. Are you on?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. We just wanted to make sure your sound worked. Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Foster.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Bookland.
Good morning, Janelle. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much. Good morning, Commissioner Eskridge.
Good morning, Janelle.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock. Looks like we have a quorum. So I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to all of our guests who are present. Janelle, do you want to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Certainly. Good morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm just going to review a few decorum rules for all. Number 1, please ensure your mic is muted unless you are speaking. Number 2, please state your name before speaking. Number 3, in general, please have your cameras on if possible if you are speaking. You may turn your cameras off if you're experiencing technological challenges. This goes for staff as well. Number 4, as a reminder, the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. And this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. Thank you. Let's have a great meeting.
Thank you, Janelle. So, Michael, before we get to the 2 introductions, do we have any announcements?
Just a brief announcement from Commissioner Wilson. He's recovering, and we just wanted to thank members of the commission for all the well wishes.
Okay, well, if you talk to him, pass him our best. I hope he has a quick recovery. Okay, so we have 2 introductions. First, Bill Walker is going to introduce Ben Nerad, Capital Investment Policy Advisor. I hope I pronounced his last name correct.
Well, that's the way I pronounce it. So if it's wrong, he'll let us know at some point.
Okay.
I'm Bill Walker, Senior Director for Strategy. I'm very pleased to introduce Ben Nerad. We hired Ben to give my team the quantitative and policy expertise that we need to tackle some of the tough strategic spending, revenue, and finance decisions we face. Among other tasks he's going to do for us, he's looking at ways to improve our rate setting process. He'll take over some of the financial metric work that I've done and eventually help us with cost benefit analysis for capital spending. His background, most recently, he was Bureau Director in the Medicaid program at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. He started as an analyst there. Before that, he worked at the UW-Madison's Institute for Research on Poverty as an assistant project director and researcher. He started his career as a legislative aide and policy director in the Wisconsin legislature. He has bachelor's and master's degrees from UW-Madison. And in his spare time, he enjoys fly fishing for trout in the driftless region, hiking, reading, and this was before COVID, seeing live music and checking out restaurants. Ben's a native of Green Bay, and he currently lives on the Near East Side of Madison. Please join me in welcoming Ben.
Welcome, Ben. Hope you enjoy your time with the district. Okay, Janelle, you're going to introduce Shelley Paquette, the Program Resource Assistant.
Yes, one moment here. Okay, good morning, commissioners. I am very pleased, and I don't know, I'm sorry, I keep bumping this. There we go. I am very pleased to introduce Shelley Paquette. I have something a little written up here, so I'm going to probably be looking down a bit. But I recently brought Shelley on just last week. She is a part-time program resource associate on the resource team. Shelley comes to us with over 25 years of administrative experience. She has done everything from large-scale events to everyday office functions. So we are very pleased with the breadth of her skills, and she will be complementing our team with her strong proofreading and grammatical skills. She has her degree in arts at the legal secretarial program from Madison Business College. Some of her favorite things to do is she loves to boat, take trips in the summer, go camping, walking, reading, shopping, hanging out on her deck and enjoying the nice weather. So today, when she's off, she'll be enjoying the nice weather this afternoon. She has a husband, John, and a son, a full-grown son, Austin, and they all live in Stoughton. She sought this position because she thought it looked interesting, thought her skills would be a good match, and due to the pandemic, had found herself without a job a little earlier this year. So we are very pleased to find somebody with such an arsenal of skill and ability and be able to bring them onto our team. Interesting fact about her is she grew up in Southwest Wisconsin and she married her high school sweetie. And would you please help me welcome Shelley? She is with us here today, and extend a warm welcome. Thank you.
Welcome, Shelley. Hope you enjoy your tenure with the district. Janelle, very good job, as did Bill. Okay, do we have any appearances by the public? I don't hear anybody. Okay, so we'll move on to the consent calendar where we have the approval of minutes from 4/29. Cash statement for the operating, the capital projects, and the debt service fund. Then we have review and approval of sanitary sewer extensions. We have 3 new construction, 2 reconstruction projects. And then award of contract for the 2021 inflow and infiltration reduction program engineering services. Do we have any questions before we move on to a motion on the consent calendar?
President Hubble, I just wanted to mention 2 brief things. One, I'd like to call the commission's attention that Ostera has paid all past due invoices and is back on track with paying monthly invoices on time, including this month for the $12,906 under miscellaneous receipts. The Struvite harvesting last month, they made their large last payment to get up on track. So I wanted to thank our accounting staff for making that happen. There's also want to make note of a very large disbursement, a large payment of $648,000 for the Oxbow applicator, which the commission has previously approved and is already in operation. So with that, I don't have any other comments on the consent calendar unless there's questions by the commission.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Good to hear that Ostera is paid up. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion, Tom. Commissioner
Okay.
Clark.
I'll second it.
Motion
Murphy.
by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Murphy to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, that will take us to item 4, the update on the procurement administrative guideline. Dana Burmaster, you're gonna lead this? Well, I see Dana's picture present, so she must have signed in.
I'm here. Let me see. I'm trying to share my screen.
Oh, okay.
Did that work?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good morning. I'm Dana Burmaster and I'm the budget manager for the district. Been at the district about a year and a half. It's been a wonderful experience working here. And today we have an update for you on our procurement administrative guideline. And I know in the past, the commission has expressed interest in learning more about our procurement processes and our guidelines. So we're here to share that with you today. But I also want to introduce Matt Lightson. He's our procurement agent. If you haven't met him at a previous commission meeting, he was instrumental in implementing this for the district. And he's also here with me today to answer questions. So I only have a handful of slides, but I'm probably going to go a little off script, and I would appreciate too if you have questions. This can be more of a discussion about the new procurement guideline. So first of all, why an update? Well, the procurement code was last updated in 1992. So it's old. It's time for us to look at that as a district, as we're modernizing policies and procedures. I know I've talked to the commission before about how we're doing this in the accounting area also. So we're doing it in procurement. But the old code also was developed for construction. So it was pretty inflexible if you were purchasing non-construction goods or services. And so we wanted to address that with the new guidelines. Also, we had old approval limits, which are kind of low for today's standards. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we changed some of those. But we addressed that with the new guidelines. And we wanted to create efficiencies. I'll give you a couple examples of what I've seen since I started at the district with our old procurement code. Any purchase over $1,000 had to be approved by Michael, the CED. That's about 850 purchases a year. And so we estimate with the new code, excuse me, that will be about 250. Any purchase over 1,000 also required 5 approvals, and now that will be 2. So those are just 2 examples of where we wanted to create efficiencies with the new guidelines. And then this also provided us an opportunity to update our manual tools and workflows. And so that's been a really good opportunity for us. Purpose and intent. So this part of the guideline was key. We were very careful in drafting this. We went through many versions. Obviously, we want to comply with commission policies and state statutes and regulations. But competition is always our focus, and we prefer competitive bidding. So we wanted to make sure that that was stated clearly in the new guideline, and avoiding corruption and favoritism is also key. But we also added removing barriers to inclusion. So the district intends to do an inclusion study for procurement in 2022. We have just begun researching best practices on this. We have contacted some other organizations, and we're sharing information back and forth. One of those is the Jefferson County Metropolitan Sewer District. And so this is a goal of ours in 2022 to address, but we did include it in the new guidelines that we will be focusing on that. A little on the process, we created a team, included Michael, included me, Matt Lightson, the procurement agent. We had legal review and directors all participated. In addition, we've worked with the buyers at the district. So each department has a buyer, and we've collaborated with them and communicated with them on the new guidelines. But we also reviewed some best practices, and we found some interesting things. So we looked at state of Wisconsin agencies, Dane County, City of Madison, talked to Green Bay, and got all of their procurement guidelines and review those. So that helped us really craft what we thought would be the best for us. So what's new? First, we have defined authority. And you're probably thinking that wasn't in the old procurement code. Well, it wasn't really. So we've provided a lot of clarity on roles and responsibilities that were ambiguous before. We've changed approval limits. We're putting a little bit more accountability in the departments. And less formal advertising for non-construction. And the biggest thing is there's 2 new types or updated types of procurement. I think you'll be most interested in that. So I'll go through those. So we now have 5 types of procurement. We have construction, which is subject to sealed competitive bidding requirements. We follow Wisconsin statutes and DNR guidelines if we're using clean water fund loans. That one's pretty straightforward. We have non-construction, which is small repairs, equipment, supplies. We have professional services. So that would be your IT, legal, planning consultants. And those are based on qualification with consideration of cost, but we don't always go with the lowest cost on professional services. And all levels of professional services require an RFP. So the 2 updated or new ones are competitive negotiations. And competitive negotiations are non-construction and must have CED approval. This allows us the flexibility to make purchases for goods or services on factors other than cost. And then we have piggybacking, which is that we can leverage state of Wisconsin contracts that have been competitively bid. So this does allow our departments increased flexibility when purchasing non-construction goods. So an example might be, we're going to purchase a number of computers and the state of Wisconsin has a contract with CDW and we can leverage that contract. So those are the 2 big changes to the types of procurement and the new guidelines. And then we always have exemptions. Justification must be provided and approval must be from the CED. And there's 4 kinds of exemptions. Emergency, which I know we've talked about recently at the commission with the belt line repairs. Sole source, meaning that only one provider can meet the requirements. Inseparability, the item cannot be separated from the provider. For example, an IT installation or a public speaker. And then the last exemption would be a partnership organization. And an example of that would be Saltwise or working with UW. All of those, of course, require CED approval. So those are the 5 types of procurement vehicles we have in the new guidelines. So you may be wondering if allowing more flexibility undermines internal controls. And we've actually increased controls with the new guidelines. And some of the ways we've done that is we've increased documentation requirements and we store those centrally. We have recently, in the last couple of years, limited the number of buyers at the district and require that they all have training on our guidelines. We've modernized our systems, so we've added automated workflows for CED approvals of the negotiated procurement and the exemptions from competitive bidding. So we can track this better and document everything centrally. And we've scheduled health checks. So we will be doing twice a year procurement reviews of all the documentation that buyers have stored. So we think actually with the new guidelines, it allows more flexibility, but it also has more controls in place for the district. So here's where we are. Michael signed the guideline, the administrative guideline, May 1st. All departments are in progress with training, and we've collaborated with each department on their development and training plan. That's going really well. We have the procurement manual and all the workflows updated and available to staff. And we're planning our first health check in 6 months. So it's been a really good process. It's taken us longer than we thought, but that's okay because we really took our time to make sure that the administrative guideline was the best it could be, and that we had the manual and the workflows updated and the changes in our IT systems tested before we went live. So it's been great. And again, I want to thank Matt Lights and our procurement agent for all of his work over the past few months getting this done. So we would love questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Dana? Thank you, Dana, and congratulations to you and Matt for getting that completed. Okay, Sarah, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. This was really helpful. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the difference between, just trying to remember the words, the competitive bidding requirements. Like, I guess I'm just not fully understanding when that's applicable as opposed to needing to go through, competitive negotiations versus the competitive bidding process. And also if that has anything to do with some of the requirements around clean water loans or some of our kind of state requirements for certain projects. Maybe just a little bit more on differentiating how we know which projects fall into various categories.
Yep. So construction, we always follow the state statutes and the Clean Water Fund or the DNR guidelines for Clean Water Fund loans. So we don't differ from that, and we use whatever guideline is stricter. So if DNR has a stricter guideline than the state statutes for construction, then we use that. For non-construction, you can use negotiated procurement. And again, that would have to be approved through the CED with justification. And what I didn't mention is we've put in place a form that the departments fill out if they're going to use or if they want to use negotiated procurement. And so they fill out the justification and then that goes to the CED for review and approval. I don't know, Matt, did you want to add anything on that?
I'll reemphasize the point that you made, Dana, earlier, that we prefer, and it's written into the administrative guideline, that we want to use competitive bidding. And then, as you also mentioned, there is a form in place. So if we determine that it's not in our, it might not be in our best interest to do competitive bidding, and we want to use the competitive proposal, competitive negotiation process, that yes, that has to go up to Michael for approval prior to using that.
Thanks, that's helpful. Could you give me an example of when we would maybe use a competitive negotiation instead of a competitive proposal?
Well, Sarah, we haven't actually used it yet.
Sure. Theoretical,
Yes.
You know, kind of broad strokes is fine.
I know. I think I'm sure you got that. So one of the things that would or maybe fall into this category, and of course Michael would have to approve it first before we could use it, would be if we're going to do an IT installation of some kind where we're purchasing hardware and we're purchasing the expertise of the company to install that. So, you know, if we were to let that out for low bid only, then the equipment would dictate, you know, who is going to be awarded. And what we might want to do is allow factors other than the cost of the equipment, which would be this expertise or the experience of the company performing the installation to help drive the decision on which company we want to use.
Okay, that's really helpful, Matt. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I got a question following up. Trying to think of the best way to phrase it. Do you have policies or guidelines within your you're talking of competitive negotiation as within your subsection or whatever that deals with the competitive negotiation that talk about, you know, what you should have or things to meet to avoid going through the other processes? Because it seems to me that competitive negotiation is almost, once you get through the construction, it's almost like just another subset under professional services or non-construction services. Because obviously the construction you're following, you know, the state statute is the king on that, and then our policies, but everything else is kind of open game as to how you can do it. I don't recall statute regulating that type of stuff. So do you have guidelines to help direct people as to when they would best or use competitive negotiation over, you know, the RFP process, for example?
So this is Dana. Yes, so we do have guidelines for staff. We have documentation, and then we have built into the workflow what they need to provide to ask for approval, what justification they have to provide, and what documentation they have to store. But you're correct, it's not in statute like it is for construction. So I think the controls that we've built in to manage this process at the district will help with that, but we can't refer back to state statute like we do for construction.
Okay. Then one other question. It was a month or two ago, we had that issue with the procurement of that, where we were challenged. I think it was a piece of lab equipment. Would this have changed anything in that instance? The new procurement policies?
So the quick answer is no, because we feel that we did everything correctly at the district with that procurement. It's always a challenge for Matt and myself to work with the departments on developing specifications because they're the experts on that. We do collaborate with them and help them and make sure it's as open and competitive as it can be. But I don't think the new guideline would, to be honest, prevented what happened with the lab equipment procurement.
Okay.
Maybe I'll jump in there. I can jump in there too. I mean, that was not a negotiated procurement. That was a low bid.
Right.
And the one vendor just didn't meet the bid specification.
I guess I recall that. The reason I was asking is that is not a situation where we would have gone to a competitive negotiation. We would have still continued with our RFP process. Yeah, okay. That's why I asked. I just wanted to follow that. Okay, Sarah, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, thanks for this work. I think it's really great to see this sort of advancement. And I guess I would just say from a broader policy perspective, I'm really excited that you're moving in the next step to try to figure out how we are more proactive about how we remove barriers to inclusion on our bidding. So especially when we think about kind of streamlining some of the requirements for what is noticed in formal channels, which I think makes perfect sense because, right, the idea behind that is to make sure that there's transparency and everybody has an ability to bid, but we know it doesn't always work that way and that we need to be more proactive in trying to solicit bids and engage with potential vendors. So just a little chiming in to say, thanks for doing this next step and trying to put more internal policies in place to try to do more work on getting a more robust set of vendors and contracts that we would be engaging with in the district moving forward.
Okay. Oops. Brad, do you have your hand up now?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Sarah said. I think it's good work overall, and I appreciate the effort. I'd be interested in hearing back maybe after the policy has been in place for a year, some examples of when the competitive negotiation process has been used and under what circumstances. So if you could report back to the commission on that, that would be great. And then just a couple very minor picky points on the formatting of the document. Under section 1.06 and 4.00, there's just a couple of small inconsistencies in the formatting. So thank you. Overall, I think it was a very good product.
I wanted to mention, Commissioner Murphy, that if it's an approval that's over $50,000, we'll be bringing those awards to you, and at that point we will do a really good job of we have a lot of accountability in explaining the justification if we use a negotiated procurement, and everyone knows at the district that I have an extremely high bar for that, for it to be justified, because it's the exception, not the rule. And especially if I'm coming to the commission for approval, I need a very strong justification, and that's why Dana and Matt have put really good controls in place.
Okay. Good point. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I don't see any other hands up. Okay, thank you very much, Dana and Matt. That will move us to the Chief Engineer and Director report. Michael, your CED update.
Yes, thank you. I have a few items to report this morning. Yesterday morning, we had a small foaming incident, which it becomes an overflow event for us. And operators have been mitigating and trying to manage some foaming issues in the digesters all week. This is something that can be seasonal, and foaming is, just when we get material coming out of various places for a variety of reasons. And in recent years, that foaming has reduced significantly through some of the improvements we've had at the treatment plant. However, we did have about a 70-gallon spill on the ground, and there were no environmental or public health risks because all of that material was contained on site. And we have begun the DNR notice, and that I believe that's occurred, but there is no public notice required. I may have mentioned briefly a meeting or two ago that one legal project that I'm having Stafford Rosenbaum work on is our standard forms of contract agreement. Currently, when we let's say we buy uniforms or have an IT contract, we sign an agreement, and that agreement outlines the terms and conditions. And many times we use the agreements that are developed by the vendors, and that when we do that, it requires a lot of legal review by our legal staff and our project managers to make sure it meets the district's interests. I've had on my to-do list for several years for us to have our own agreements and require all of our vendors and engineering firms and everyone who does work for the district to use our standard forms of agreement. And that just has not been able to get done. So I've authorized Stafford to do this work this year as a special legal service. And the estimated cost will not exceed about 40 hours of work, about $12,000, likely less than that. And that's within my authority to authorize that within the 10% of the contract amount. Should it extend beyond that, I will return to the commission for your approval. So I wanted to let you know when the Stafford invoices come through, and not only will we have the retainer, the $8,500 retainer a month, but there will be some additional legal services that I've authorized. The last item I have before I turn it over to Attorney Kent is the PS7 emergency force main repair. Since Bruce Borelli's last report, we have been in a bit of a holding pattern. We're waiting for a repair clamp that we need to fix the pipe that we cut open to make our TV inspection. That repair clamp is supposed to arrive this week. And we're going to begin doing the inspection. Bruce and his team will be doing the inspection likely today or tomorrow. The ground penetrating radar that we did conduct, we received the report. And the good news is it did not indicate any subsurface presence of water or airfield voids, which is always the concern for potential collapse. And we were really worried about that. And the GPR did not indicate any risks to that note. However, there is the risk of a spill that could impact the environment because we have an empty pipe. And if that pipe collapses, because we still don't know the condition of it, that could be a major problem for us, as well as if one of the valves would that's holding the raw wastewater back would fail, that's holding back tons of wastewater. On balance, this is still an emergency, and we are proceeding in that manner. Once we are completed with the inspection, we will be contracting out, sole source contracting, to do the liner work that Bruce previously described, unless the inspection tells us otherwise. And we've spent approximately $40,000 to date on this. One of the considerations, and this was a really serious consideration for us, is we had to balance the risk to the public and the environment with the potential legal risk of proceeding without preparing plans, specifications, and receiving public bids, which could delay the repair about 4 months. And we have chosen that the risks to the public far outweighed those legal risks. And Paul, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Kent, where he can share more information with you. And if you'd like more details about Paul's report, I would suggest that we schedule a closed session in 2 weeks to get into more of the detailed legal risks. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. I won't go into a lot of detail, but it's one of those things that while the statutes generally recognize an emergency exception to competitive bidding for these kinds of situations, and you find that for cities, villages, and other municipal entities, it is not explicitly referenced for metropolitan sewerage districts under subchapter 1 of chapter 200. It's a bit of an anomaly in my opinion, but there is common law precedent that allows this to proceed. So, I mean, I think there is a legal basis to do it, and the fact that we don't have express authority I think is not necessarily preclude us from proceeding, but there is some consideration there. I do think that when one looks at this both from a a practical standpoint that our risk and exposure is relatively limited. But I did want to at least, I alerted Michael and group and wanted to let you know that there is kind of this potential issue out there. So as Michael mentioned, I think if any of you want to get into this in more detail, it might be more appropriate for closed session, but I wanted you to at least be aware of that.
Okay, thank you, Michael, Paul. Anyone have any questions? Okay, I don't see any hands. Paul, you want to move on to your regulatory and legal report?
Yes, I'll be glad to do that. Actually, there's not a lot of new things to report since I covered a lot of this at our last commission meeting. I did want to just provide one small update with respect to the PFAS rule process. And that's the one that has the potential for most directly impacting us, the surface water quality standards rule. In the rule process at this point, before the rule goes forward into kind of drafting and public hearing, there's what's called an economic impact analysis that has to be done. The department had collected wastewater samples from, I think it's over 120 municipalities now. Those results are not going to be compiled until, I believe, at this point, sometime in July. And there is some, at least what I've seen, some of those results, have come back, but not all of them have come back. But notwithstanding that, the department is now saying they're looking at releasing the economic impact analysis either later this month or early June, which is before those results are going to be compiled, which is odd since that was the stated reason for them requesting the samples. But in any event, we should be seeing something in that regard later this month. We're also hoping to have some additional discussions with the department concerning how such standards would be implemented and whether they would be looking at things like implementation through best management practices as opposed to treatment. So those are some things that we'll know a lot more about probably in next month. But otherwise, everything else is pretty much as it was last month, so not a whole lot of other new developments at this point. But I'd be glad to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Paul? Okay, I don't see any hands up. Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
That is a little odd that you think you'd want to have release the data so people knew what you were working off of to do your economic analysis, because you think the level of contamination would affect the economic analysis. Okay, future meeting schedules in the packet. Any future agenda topics? Any other business? And Grant, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just one. Given the kind of the regulatory update with PFAS, I know that's still we don't really know exactly where that's heading, but I don't know if that's already scheduled for one of our upcoming meetings. That'd be great just to get a kind of overall update with where things lie, both on the testing front. I know there was some early exploration around treatment options, all that sort of stuff. Would be great.
I had the same question, and then I looked at the future meeting agenda. It looks like it's on June, the first meeting in June.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
2 weeks.
Good news.
Or
Martin's
a month.
due to come. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, a month away after that. That leads us to any other business. And with Tom Wilson gone, we need somebody else to motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Clark,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Swanson to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Seems
Thanks,
like really
everybody.
nice
Quiet.
weather.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.